The question of what happens to Sohrab after The Kite Runner ends is something that I actually try to answer, because The Kite Runner, when I wrote it in a manuscript, actually had a different ending than the one that is in the published work. It was a much longer ending, and it dealt with the process of Sohrab integrating into his life in America, into this new family with Amir and his wife, and his kind of slowly just coming back to life and opening up and so on. And I realized 50 to 60 pages into the writing of that ending that I was writing another book, and that The Kite Runner was really about Amir's journey and his self-discovery and his dilemmas and his moral choices, and that I had to get back to that. And it was actually more effective to leave that open-ended, to let the reader decide for themselves what happens to Sohrab after the book ends. One of the questions that people ask me frequently is, what is the moment at which Amir, quote-unquote, becomes good again? And it's hard for me to say that there is a point at which that happens, or if that even happens. I almost feel like, and I don't mean to be coy, but I almost feel like the job of the writer is to simply pose the questions, is to present a situation, pose the right questions, and then let the answers linger in the air and let the readers grab at them, and everybody's going to reach a different answer. I certainly think when it comes to Amir, there was an intent to atone for some of his misdeeds from his youth in Kabul. There's this grueling journey to Afghanistan and this search for the boy, and both the physical and emotional beating that he takes. Whether that atones for what he did, whether he ever, quote-unquote, becomes good again, I think those are questions that the reader has to decide for themselves. I certainly don't have the answer. When I write my books, I rarely know what the ending is going to be. And so I don't know ahead of time the fate of Maryam, for instance, or what's going to happen to Amir. And it's only through writing the story that I get to a place where I almost see like there's no choice, that this is the only natural end to the story. And when I reached the end of 1,000 Splendid Suns, and I finally saw for the first time how things were going to unfold, I felt like there was no other way I could go. That if I went a different way, it would really deviate from the truth that I hopefully had set up for 350 pages, and that it would be inconsistent with the story that I had created before. And I don't think the ending of that novel is sad, particularly. I mean, certainly what happens to Maryam is tragic, but nevertheless, the story ends on a hope of note and optimism, and Layla returning to Afghanistan and helping, in the reconstruction process. It leaves you with a feeling of hope and sober optimism. In The Kite Runner, the internal fighting within Afghanistan that happened in the 90s happens kind of, quote-unquote, off-screen. And the reason for that is Amir's in exile in those years. He's living his life in Northern California, going to the flea market with his dad and getting married and becoming a writer and so on and so forth. While far away, in Afghanistan, the country is really unraveling, and there's ethnic fighting and chaos and destruction. And Amir, when he goes back to Afghanistan, sees the consequences of that. But there are certain narrative choices you make during the writing of a novel. I think ultimately every writer serves the narrative, and you have to do what the story demands. And I didn't see that the internal conflict within Afghanistan in the 90s being part of Amir's story, being part of his life.